Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. I am back from an extended absence over the holiday. For those that didn't see my community post or my post on Twitter, I wanted to completely unplug, unwind, both from my regular work and any channel activity, content creation for the whole week while I spent some time away with my family. But we are back now. A lot has happened with the Bulls while I was away. I didn't watch all the games in their entirety when they were live, but I did rewatch the games after the fact when I had time in the evenings. Bulls, of course, would make it a 5-game winning streak, beating both the Cavs and the Hawks twice, and then proceeding to lose to the Bucks and the Timberwolves. The Wolves game being especially bad, where they lost Kobe and Josh Giddey in the middle of it. Both would not return, and a competitive first half turned into a beatdown in the second half. But I have a lot of thoughts in observing these games over the past week, as well as this ongoing debate, this ongoing dilemma among Bulls Nation, especially given the light of the news of Josh Giddey going to be missing significant time. That, of course, is the tanking debate, whether the Bulls should be sellers at the deadline, offload, sell off assets to acquire future assets, and tank for the rest of the season. And that's what I'll be talking about in this video here. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you all had a great Christmas, happy holidays, and got to spend some quality time with family. And appreciate you guys for your understanding and the lack of content on my end during this time. So when I left, the Bulls had won 3 games in a row. They had just come off that insane win against the Hawks, where they put up a season high 152 points in regulation. And I mentioned in that post-game video, hey, I like what I'm seeing. Well, not really on the defensive end, but I like what I'm seeing. I'm just not quite ready to say we're back yet. I'm just not there yet, because this team has tricked us before. Of course, like any Bulls season, it's an up and down roller coaster, but they were finally playing with a sense of urgency. They were finally playing with hustle and energy, and they were getting back to their ways in playing fast, heavy ball movement and player movement that really shaped the early identity of this team to start the season. And when the Bulls would go on to beat the Hawks again, coming back from being down as many as 18 points in that game, they would make a comeback in the second half to defeat the Sixers as well, really closing things out in both of those games in the final minutes. I said, okay, is this the Bulls team we can expect? Is this actually the real Bulls team? The one we saw at the start of the season, now that they're actually fully healthy? And was that huge slump we saw where they lost 7 straight truly attributed to the team just being shorthanded? It's probably somewhere in the middle, if we're being honest with ourselves, and that kind of came out in the following 2 games in which they lost. But at a minimum, it's clear that when this team is fully healthy, they're a decent team. Still doesn't excuse the poor play during that stretch a couple of weeks ago, because even shorthanded teams should come out better with better effort and better play than we saw there. And as we all know, no team is immune to injuries. Every NBA team goes through their fair share of injuries. The Bulls are no exception to that, and they need to figure out how to at least maintain their compete level even when they don't have all of their guys. And that's especially the case now, as Zach Collins suffering that sprained toe that's going to keep him out at least a week. Kobe White, we don't know how long he's going to be out with that calf tightness, not a strain, calf tightness, which is good. And then, of course, Josh Giddey, that strained hamstring, which is going to keep him out, according to Shams Charania, at least a few weeks. My guess is we're probably looking in the 4 to 6 week range there. So he is going to be missing a significant period of time. I would argue Josh Giddey's the Bulls' best player. So that is a brutal loss that they're going to have to figure out to be able to sustain while he's going to be out of the lineup. Now, when both of those guys got hurt in that game against the Wolves, and it was said, the players would not be returning, of course, we all got to see what this team really looks like without their starting backcourt and top 2 scorers. And yeah, it was not good. In fact, it was nearly unwatchable level basketball. So of course, I saw a lot of people on Twitter saying, this is great. This is what we need. No Josh, no Kobe means this team is going to be seeing a lot of losing, which means it's going to improve our chances at landing a top 3 pick. Now, sounds like that might not be the case anyway, because Kobe is probably not going to be out for very long. Obviously, Josh Giddey will eventually return. But I guess what I want to know from the pro tankers, the ones that actually want to see the Bulls lose, the ones that want to see the Bulls be horrible for the rest of the season to get a top pick, I actually want to know, how do you propose for them to go about doing this, meaning tanking? Because I think we can all agree it's currently constructed. They're not a bad enough team to finish as one of the worst teams in the NBA. And even if they sell off, let's say, Kobe and Vucevic, they get rid of the expirings of Zach Collins and Kevin Huerter, and let's say in that exchange, they bring back lesser talented players to make them worse, or players that are distressed assets that they plan to dump in the offseason anyway. Where does that even get you? Because what I feel a lot of people have a hard time understanding when talking about this idea of tanking tanking, that direction, that strategy, if you want to call it that, this has to be decided at the very beginning of the season, from the first game of the year. What people don't realize is that it's actually hard to finish with the worst record in the NBA. Only one team out of 30 can finish with the worst record, just like only one team can win the title. Finishing in the bottom 2, 3, or even bottom 5 is actually much harder to do than most people think, because at the end of the day, the players and coaches are always going to play to win. They're going to play for their contracts. They're going to play because they're the best players in the world and they want to compete at the highest level. There inevitably will be games that even the worst of the worst rosters are going to win against teams that they had no business beating. And so when it comes to the Bulls, let's say for a minute that Josh and Kobe are in fact going to be out for weeks on end. And even if the Bulls go on some crazy losing stretch where they lose like 20 of their next 25 games, that's a lot of losing. Even with all of that losing, they're still too far ahead in the standings to be able to catch up to the likes of the Wizards, the Pacers, the Pelicans, the Nets, hell, even the Kings and the Clippers, despite the fact that those two teams are actually trying to win. You're not going to catch those teams in the tank standings. None of those teams are suddenly going to be going on massive winning streaks. And as bad as you might think the Bulls are, they're not going to lose 20 of their next 25 games. And even if they did, again, it's still not enough losing to fall below some of the current bottom feeders. It is already too late for the Bulls to tank. They've already won too many games. And whenever they do get back to being healthy, they're going to win more. Like, you can be mad at the front office for not picking a direction that gives them the best lottery odds. You're entitled to that, but they were always committed to winning. They've always been clear about that. They picked a direction, you just don't like the direction that they took. And so to me, here is what I don't get and why Bulls fans still get so worked up about this and pounding their chests and saying we need to tank. Guys, that ship has sailed. For one, because the front office has already signaled that they're not doing that. But two, the minute they went 5-0 to start the year, the tank was already off. It's too late. And I think if Bulls fans embrace and accept the fact that we're not going to tank, that we might get a lottery pick, even though it won't be a high one, although the last 2 years, play-in teams landed the number 1 pick and the worst team in the league got the 5th pick. But accepting that tanking's not going to happen, and that unlike just a couple of years ago where the Bulls had a horrible outlook with aging veterans, expensive deals, draft picks they owed other teams, the Bulls, while still not a great team, actually have some pieces they can work with. They have a ton of cap flexibility and control of all their picks. So yeah, to me, and I know a lot of you guys know this about me already, I don't buy this notion that the only way you can build this thing is by being a horrible team, borderline unwatchable, all for the hope of hitting a top pick that may never materialize. The odds aren't great. The best you can get is having a 14% chance of landing the number 1 pick. That's if you finish with the worst record in the NBA. The absolute best you can do is having a 52% chance of getting a top 4 pick if you finish with the worst record in the NBA. And even then, what most people don't consider is that even if you hit that top pick, it doesn't mean that your selection is guaranteed to turn into a franchise-changing player. Like, how many times have we seen busted top 5 picks? The Pelicans thought they hit the mother lode in 2019 in landing Zion Williamson. The Sixers thought they got their next LeBron James in Ben Simmons in 2016. What about Andrew Wiggins in 2014? Remember #tank for Wiggins? Oh yeah, remember how that 2014 draft class was supposed to be a historically deep class? Kind of like what we've been hearing about this upcoming 2026 class, right? And so to me, being bad, really bad, simply for the sake of banking your future on having better odds is not a strategy. That's a gambler's fallacy. I get that the better odds you have, the more likely you're able to hit on a top tier talent. I understand the probabilities and the math behind it. I've heard it all before. I get that it's worked out for certain teams like the Thunder, the Spurs, the Pistons, but those teams did more than just tanking. They also made smart, calculated moves and decisions to build and construct the right roster. So no, the Bulls missing Josh and Kobe isn't going to get them to a place where they can conceivably tank. And it's not going to get them to a place where they're going to develop their young players, build winning habits, a winning culture, and motivate the guys for the future. Tanking is easier said than done. It's actually much harder to do in practice with everything falling in your favor. Anyway, Bulls have got the Pelicans coming up. No idea what to expect for this game because the Bulls have already lost to these guys twice now and are going to be pretty shorthanded in this game. I'll have a post-game video out after the game, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.